This man's name was once feared more than fire, Angulimala. It moved through villages like a shadow cast before nightfall, sharp, sudden, unforgettable. The mere sound of it sent shudders, closing footsteps, halting mothers, whispering prayers behind closed doors. But here, under the hush of trees and the first sighs of twilight, his name carries a different weight. Not rage, not terror, something quieter. A sorrow that no longer burns but smolders. A question more than a verdict. You walk the same forest now, not as a hunter, not as the hunted, but as someone who understands what it means to carry a name that once meant something else. Maybe yours never made the stories, but still, you know the weight of memory, the ache of regret, the shape of a past that lingers long after it's over. The trees around you are tall and forgiving. They don't lean away, they don't accuse. They've seen many pass through here, monks and murderers alike, and all of them in the end, simply men and women with breath in their lungs and dust on their feet. You pause beneath a tree whose roots sprawl like the fingers of the earth. The bark is rough against your back as you rest, and the silence welcomes you, not because you are perfect, but because you are still here. Angulimala once walked these paths with fury in his heart and a garland of fingers around his neck. He had reasons, perhaps, stories, wounds, but none of them softened the fear he left behind. And yet, he changed. Not because he erased what he did, but because he met someone who didn't look away. The Buddha stood before him without anger, without fear, without defense, just presence. And in that mirror of stillness, Angulimala saw something he had forgotten: his own capacity to stop running, to stop hurting, to simply stop. That's what tonight is. Not redemption, not rewriting, just the quiet power of stopping. You sit with that. You feel the earth beneath you solid and unchanged. The forest doesn't care who you were, it listens to who you are right now. Maybe there are things you wish you could undo. Maybe your garland is made not of fingers, but of memories, sharp words, broken promises, silences that lasted too long. Still, you are breathing. Still, you are here, and that matters. The moon has not risen yet, but the sky begins to shift. A deeper blue, a hush that grows even softer. You breathe slowly. You let the past settle like dust instead of clinging like armor. The wind moves gently through the leaves. You let it move through you too. This is not a moment for solving. It is a moment for being. And being, as the Buddha once showed, can be the beginning of everything. You think of Angulimala again, not as a name, but as a man, sitting where he once ran, offering water where he once took. He didn't undo the past. He didn't beg to be called good. He simply served the present moment, again and again, like a monk sweeping the same stone path, knowing it will be covered in leaves tomorrow. You place your hand on your chest. The beat is steady now, like footsteps returning home, like forgiveness that doesn't need to be spoken aloud. There is no rush here, no proving, just breath, just stillness, just the gentle rhythm of becoming. Above you, a bird shifts in the branches, not startled, just aware. You are not hiding anymore. You are not running. You are here, and here is enough. They called him Angulimala, the garland of fingers, not because he wore it with pride, but because it was all anyone saw. You imagine the weight of that, not just the fingers themselves, dry and curled like old leaves, strung one by one around his neck, but the story they told. Everyone a choice, everyone a moment of rage or confusion or pain turned outward. The garland wasn't just a symbol of cruelty, it was a mirror, one he could never take off. And still he wore it. Tonight, as you sit beneath the sheltering trees, you wonder about your own garland. Perhaps yours is invisible, made not of bone and skin, but of moments that still sting when remembered. A conversation you avoid in your mind, a memory you flinch from, a silence that bloomed where words should have gone. You may not wear it around your neck, but you feel it around your heart, the tension, the tightness, the quiet guilt that never seems to let go. Angulimala's story is not easy to hold. It isn't wrapped in comfort or simplicity. He killed many. That's not a metaphor. It happened. His life was the stuff of fear, even to those who had never seen his face. And yet he is remembered not just as a murderer, but as a monk, a disciple, one who sat close to the Buddha, one who found stillness, not by forgetting, but by turning toward the very thing he feared, his own mind. There's something deeply human in that. You shift slightly where you sit, feeling the ground beneath you. The warmth from the sun still lingers on the earth, though evening has fallen. You close your eyes for a moment, and the sounds of the forest rise around you. Crickets wind the creak of an old branch overhead. This is what Angulimala heard too, perhaps after he laid down his weapons, after he stopped running. They say the Buddha did not flinch when he saw him coming, did not turn, did not shout, did not fight. He simply kept walking calm as moonlight across a lake, and Angulimala, breathless from pursuit, shouted, "Stop," to which the Buddha replied, "I have already stopped. It is you who have not yet stopped." The words, like a bell through fog, cut through the noise of the killer's heart, and for the first time in years maybe, he listened. That listening is the beginning of everything. There is power in being named killer, failure, burdened sinner, but there is greater power in naming yourself anew, not denying the past, but refusing to be reduced by it. What name do you still carry, whispered only in your own mind, the one you believe when the lights are off and the world is quiet? Is it time to place that garland down? The Buddha didn't say you are good. He didn't say you are bad. He said stop. And in that stillness, something softer was possible. You sit with that word now. Stop. Not as punishment, as peace. Stop running. Stop hiding. Stop defining yourself only by what you've done or what you failed to do. Let that word move through your ribs, your spine, your shoulders. Let it unfurl the old knots, the old beliefs. Let it loosen the garland around your own heart. You don't need to become a monk tonight. You don't need to be free of all regret. You just need to stop gently. In this breath, on this earth, there's a stillness here that welcomes everything, even you, especially you. You breathe in and something shifts. Not a transformation, not yet, just space. A small, quiet space where self-blame once clung. You picture Angulimala years later, seated in robes the color of ochre and dust, his head bowed, his hands folded, his breath steady. The villagers still fear him. Some never stop. But the birds land near him now. The trees lean in. The children watch from a distance, no longer running, because something in him, something deep, has truly stopped. He does not beg to be seen as good. He simply lives gently. He offers water. He listens. He bows when others will not meet his eyes. He does not fight their fear. He makes space for it and keeps sitting. You too can sit. You too can choose to stop without fanfare, just like this breath, just like this forest. You touch your chest again. The heartbeat is there, present, not perfect, just steady. What if that's enough? You are not the worst thing you've done. You are not the name others gave you when they didn't understand. You are not the person who said those words or stayed too long or walked away too soon. You are breath. You are awareness. You are stillness waiting patiently beneath everything else. You are not unworthy because of your past. You are not lost. You are simply here. And here, there is a room for you. The wind once ran from this man. Before he stopped, before robes replaced rage, his footsteps shattered silence. Even the birds fled the canopy above him. Mothers hushed their children, not in discipline, but in dread. Travelers marked paths in the dirt, with their fingers not for direction, but to signal warning. He walks here. Go around. You imagine the way the world once pulled back at the sound of Angulimala's approach, like the forest itself recoiling, like the air tightening, preparing for harm. It was not just the body of a man that moved through space. It was a history made of fear, of violence, of a mind spiraling without anchor. But no one is born like this. Even Angulimala once knew softness. His name before the garland was Ahimsaka, the harmless one. He was a student, curious and bright, respected, trusting. He had not yet tasted betrayal, not yet been twisted by confusion or wounded pride. But the world as it does turned, and something inside him broke not all at once, but like a slow crack through stone. A lie was planted in his mind by someone he trusted. A teacher turned manipulator. If you wish to prove your worth, he was told, bring me 1,000 fingers. And when no other anchor held, Angulimala clung to this madness like a raft in stormy seas. You pause here not to excuse what happened, but to understand the soil it grew from. Because you too have had thoughts that frightened you. You too have acted from places you no longer recognize. It's strange, isn't it, how we can look back and wonder who we were in that moment. What was I thinking, we ask, as though we are interrogating a stranger. And maybe in some ways, we are. The wind brushes gently against your skin now. It no longer runs. It no longer hides. It moves through you, not around you. And in this movement there is healing, not through forgetting, but through remembering differently. Angulimala's footsteps once cracked branches and hearts. But later, much later, those same feet walked barefoot through villages, offering water and tending wounds. They moved slowly, reverently, with no rush, no demand, just service, just peace. It didn't happen overnight. There is no magic that makes guilt vanish. There is only the quiet, repeated choosing of a new direction, not once, but again, and again, and again. Tonight you feel your own feet, rooted, still resting on the earth. You haven't done what he did, but maybe your thoughts have sometimes scared you. Maybe your reactions have caused harm. Maybe you've wondered if there's a version of yourself that's beyond repair. There isn't. Beneath even the fiercest storm is a still ski waiting. The Buddha didn't confront Angulimala with accusation. He didn't shout murderer or demand repentance. He simply kept walking, calm, unshaken, present. And that presence, that unwavering calm, did what swords and shame never could. It made Angulimala stop. Can you remember a time someone looked at you with that kind of presence? Not pity, not fear, just clarity. A gaze that said, I see what you've done, and I see you still. That kind of seeing changes things. It dissolves armor. It invites return. You place your hand on the ground beside you. It's cool now, evening thickening in the air. The wind has softened into something like a lullaby, not because the world has forgotten what happened, but because it no longer needs to run. You can stop running too. This moment is not about punishment. It is about pause. This breath is not about justification. It is about being. You don't need to fix the past to be worthy of peace now. You only need to be willing to sit with it, like you're doing now. Like Angulimala did, one footstep at a time, moving not away from his deeds, but toward something quieter than remorse, toward truth. Even the earth beneath him, once heavy with dread, learned to welcome his weight again. You are not separate from that possibility. Let yourself feel the soles of your feet. Even if you're lying down, you can feel them, the memory of movement, of standing, of arriving. You are not lost. You are not ruined. You are not only the person who made mistakes. You are the one choosing to stop now, to breathe, to listen. The wind once ran from him. Now it rests in the folds of his robe. And if you are very quiet, you can feel it resting beside you too. You do not need to be feared to be strong. You do not need to be perfect to be at peace. You only need to stop gently right where you are. And you have. The dust on the road clung to everything, to skin, to breath, to thought. Even the anger that burned within Angulimala found itself slowed by the weight of it. His steps were quick, but the dust refused to rise for him the way it once had. The path narrowed, the air thickened, and ahead the figure of a lone monk appeared, walking calmly, slowly, as if the world itself had no urgency at all. This man, no guards, no weapons, no fear. Just the Buddha walking with the same pace as clouds drifting across a mountain's shoulder. The kind of pace that can't be chased. The kind of stillness that spreads outward, settling even the wildest hearts. Angulimala shouted. Stop! The voice tore through the forest like a broken blade. But the monk did not stop. He walked on serene, as though the shout had been a breeze brushing past his robe. Angulimala's ran faster. Dust kicked up behind him. Sweat stung his eyes. The garland of fingers clattered against his chest like the rattling of bones in an old drum. He closed the distance, but could not catch him. Faster. He ran faster. But no matter how he strained, he could not reach the Buddha's back. And then, once more, the cry, Stop, recluse, stop. Only then did the Buddha turn. His eyes met Angulimala's, not with judgment, not with fear, but with clarity so steady it felt like a mirror. And he said simply, I have already stopped, Angulimala. It is you who have not yet stopped. That sentence split something in the air and in the man. It wasn't a riddle. It wasn't meant to confuse. It was a koan, a key, a door swinging open in the heart. The Buddha had stopped not just his body, but his violence, his striving, his craving. He no longer ran from or toward anything. He was rooted, present, whole. Angulimala, for all his running, had never stopped. Not truly, not in the heart, not in the mind. And something inside him, something ancient and hidden beneath the rage, recognized this, not with words, but with a quiet shattering. You sit quietly with that moment now. Imagine the two of them, the killer and the awakened one, standing in the hush of a forest where no bird dared cry. There was no sermon, no scolding, only truth spoken without malice. The Buddha did not try to convince. He did not recoil. He did not seek to fix. He simply stood there, unshakable. That's the kind of presence that changes lives, and it invites reflection. Have you ever met someone who, without trying to change you, made you want to soften? Someone whose calmness drew you inward, whose steadiness felt like shelter? Not because they had answers, but because they weren't afraid to sit in the questions. Maybe you've met that kind of stillness. Maybe tonight you're learning to become it. The Buddha's stillness wasn't passive. It was profound. It came from seeing through the illusions that bind us, the idea that we are only our actions, that we are forever trapped in the stories others tell about us. In that gaze, Angulimala was no longer a murderer. He was a human being with the capacity to stop. You have that capacity too. Right now, as you breathe and rest, you are not your past. You are not your mistakes. You are the one who notices, the one who stops, the one who begins again. You see, transformation doesn't always begin with effort. Sometimes it begins with stillness, the decision to stop running, stop chasing, stop numbing, to simply sit like a stone at the bottom of a stream while the water rushes around it. In that moment between them, Angulimala didn't drop to his knees. He didn't cry. He didn't beg. He simply stopped. Something within him surrendered, not to the Buddha, but to the truth of what he could no longer deny, that peace is not given, it's allowed. And the Buddha, seeing this, offered no reward, no praise, just space. Sometimes space is the most sacred thing we can be given. You rest into that space now. The earth beneath you no longer feels hard. The breath in your chest moves like gentle rain through reeds. No one is asking anything of you. There is nothing to fix, only the next breath to notice, only the next moment to remain with. The Buddha didn't perform a miracle that day. He didn't erase Angulimala's past. He didn't absolve him with a touch. He simply invited him into presence, and the man accepted. You accept it now too, the invitation, not to change everything, just to pause. The wind sighs through the trees. A soft rhythm pulses in your hands. You are not being chased. You are not chasing. You are simply here. And here, the unshakable presence of peace begins. The road did not end when Angulimala stopped running. In many ways, it began. He had lived by speed, by reaction, by intensity. His past was forged in fire and momentum, no time for thought, only instinct, only push. But now, the stillness after the storm asked something new of him: slowness. And slowness, it turned out, was harder than violence. You know this feeling. You've felt it in moments when the world demanded action, and instead something in you whispered, "Wait." That whisper was not weakness, it was wisdom. But it's hard to trust slowness in a world that praises urgency. It's hard to pause when you're afraid of what might catch up to you. For Angulimala, the slow pace of the Buddha was the first lesson. The steps of that serene monk were not careless, they were deliberate, like water shaping stone. They were not fast, but they moved everything. And Angulimala, still breathless, had to match that rhythm. So he did. He walked, not to chase, not to flee, just to walk. Imagine him heavy with past choices, fingers still hanging from his garland, blood dried into his robe, taking slow steps behind the most peaceful being on earth, one foot, then the next. He did not ask, "Am I worthy to follow?" He did not wait to be told. He simply walked, and that was enough. You walk with him now, not with your body, but with your breath, with your presence, with your willingness to stay here in this moment and not rush past it. Can you feel that the stretch of time between each inhale and exhale that is slowness? That is the place where fear begins to loosen its grip. At first, slowness feels like exposure, like standing still in the open while the world moves around you. But then something happens. The mind stops spinning. The body remembers how to listen. The heart, no longer drowned in adrenaline, begins to speak again. What does it say? Maybe nothing loud. Maybe just "I'm tired." Maybe "I want to begin again." Maybe just silence, and that too is an answer. Angulimala's body had once moved fast to avoid feeling. Rage was quicker than reflection. Revenge swifter than remorse. But following the Buddha taught him another speed, a sacred pace, where every step is intentional, every breath honored. He had no idea where they were going, and yet that no longer mattered, because when you walk slowly, the destination dissolves. The journey itself becomes the ground of change. You touch your hand to your own chest. Notice the beat, not racing, not hiding, just steady. This is your rhythm, the pace of a mind that no longer needs to outrun its past. The pace of a person remembering that they belong to the present. The world tells you to hurry to achieve, to repair, to redeem. But the path of awakening asks you only to stop striving long enough to see clearly. And when you see clearly your next step, even the smallest one becomes sacred. You're not asked to leap, only to take the next gentle step. Maybe tonight that step is forgiveness, maybe it's grief, maybe it's just rest. Angulimala's steps behind the Buddha were not always graceful. He stumbled, he questioned, he carried a storm in his chest. But each time he fell behind, the Buddha did not look back with impatience. He simply continued at his own pace, and somehow that steady movement became an anchor for Angulimala. And it can be for you. If your thoughts are racing, you don't need to chase them. Let them pass like clouds. Return to your feet, to your breath, to your spine resting against the earth or the cushion or the bed. Return to this moment, not as punishment, as mercy. Sometimes, slowness feels like surrender, but not the kind that means giving up, the kind that means letting go. Letting go of needing to fix everything tonight. Letting go of proving yourself. Letting go of the belief that speed equals worth. The forest hums with this rhythm, this hush. Even the crickets sing in a slow cadence, as if time itself has thickened. You are safe here, not because everything is resolved, but because nothing needs to be. You can be in process, like Angulimala, walking, resting, wondering, alive but not yet transformed, and that's still sacred ground. He didn't shed his past like a snake sheds its skin. No, he carried it with him gently, not as a weapon, not as shame, but as something softened by slowness. With each step, the weight became wisdom. You too can carry your past with care, not erased, not denied, but offered to the present moment as part of the story. A story that keeps unfolding gently as long as you walk slowly enough to notice it. Feel that now, the rhythm, the quiet, the breath. You are not in a hurry. There is no finish line. There is only the next small sacred step, and you're already taking it. It didn't happen all at once. The garland, that grisly necklace of fingers weathered and cracked, didn't drop dramatically to the forest floor in some grand cinematic act of redemption. No, it loosened slowly as the man beneath it softened, as the rage dissolved, as the storm that once lived behind his ribs gave way to stillness. It was not shame that made him let go. It was understanding. You sit with this image now, not of a violent man dropping his sins, but of a tired man releasing something he no longer needs to carry. Not because it has vanished, but because it no longer defines him. The garland, for so long his identity had become heavy in a different way, not as a symbol of power, but of pain. And pain, when fully seen, doesn't demand punishment, it asks for release. You may not wear a necklace of bones, but you know what it's like to carry something that no longer belongs to you. A name someone gave you, a role you've outgrown, a memory you replay even though it always hurts. What is your garland? Maybe it's a secret you've kept too long. Maybe it's a habit of shrinking yourself. Maybe it's a story you've told about who you are, one that keeps you small or sorry or silent. It doesn't matter how long you've worn it. It only matters that you see it now, that you recognize its weight, that you know gently, kindly, it's time to let it fall. There is no ceremony for this, only breath. You feel it now, your chest rising and falling, your jaw unclenching, your spine loosening against the support beneath you. You are here, and that is already enough. Angulimala didn't change because someone scolded him. He changed because someone saw him completely, without flinching, without erasing what he had done. The Buddha looked through the garland, not around it, and saw the human being beneath. To be seen like that, it untangles things. That kind of seeing doesn't demand that you become someone new overnight. It only asks you to stop pretending you are only your worst day. So Angulimala took a step, then another, and somewhere along that walk, the garland began to loosen. Not torn off, just ready to fall. Maybe that's where you are now, not done, but ready. You don't need to rip it away. You don't need to fight it. Just notice where it no longer fits. Feel how the story begins to unravel gently, like old thread. Feel the breath that replaces it, the lightness where the weight once hung. You may cry or not. You may feel nothing but a sigh. That too is release. When Angulimala finally unclasped the garland, he didn't throw it away. He buried it with reverence, with sorrow, with care, not to forget it, but to give it back to the earth. The fingers returned to soil. The soil grew trees. and the trees gave shade to travelers who would never know his name. That's how healing works sometimes: quiet, circular, invisible from the outside but real. You too can offer what no longer serves to the ground of your own awareness. You can bury it in silence, in sleep, in breath, and trust that what grows from that letting go will surprise you. No need to rush the process. No need to announce your transformation. The garland doesn't fall because of a performance. It falls because it's time. There's a kind of dignity in that, the kind that doesn't seek praise, the kind that feels like exhaling after holding your breath for years. You inhale slowly now. Let the breath rise like morning mist. And as you exhale, imagine the old garland slipping from your shoulders, landing without sound, returning to the earth that never judged you in the first place. The wind doesn't pause to applaud, the moon doesn't blink, but the night feels quieter somehow, like something sacred just happened and no one needs to know but you. Your hands rest gently now. Your jaw has softened. You are not broken. You are not bad. You are becoming something else, not someone else, just more you, more than the garland, more than the name, more than the story that got too tight. You do not need to wear your regret forever. You do not need to carry your past like a weapon or a wound. You are allowed to take it off, even if only for tonight. And if it falls quietly, naturally, like a leaf from a branch, then let it fall and rest in the space it leaves behind. The Buddha's eyes did not harden when they met Angulimala's. No fire, no recoil, no refusal, only clarity, the kind that sees everything without clinging to anything. The kind of gaze that has nothing to protect and nothing to prove. That was what met Angulimala on that road long after the dust of his deeds had settled into the stories people whispered in fear. That gaze did not say, "You are forgiven." It said something deeper, "You are still here." And for a man who had been running not just from others, but from himself, that kind of seeing was more than enough. It was the beginning of return. You've probably felt it before, someone looking at you, not with expectation or judgment, but with gentle attention. Not analyzing, not fixing, just being with you. It doesn't happen often. Most people see through filters of fear or memory or stories they've been told. But to be seen in your wholeness, even when you feel broken, that's what changes things. That's what unwinds the armor. Angulimala had never been seen that way. For so long he had been viewed as a danger, a rumor, a lesson to frighten children. His own name had stopped meaning him. It had become a threat, a wound walking upright. And yet the Buddha looked at him and did not flinch. You imagine that gaze now, soft as moonlight, steady as a mountain, clear as a quiet lake untouched by wind. A gaze that reflects, not reacts. A gaze that says, even this can be held. Even you. There is power in that kind of compassion, not because it erases what's been done, but because it sees beyond it. Angulimala did not beg to be seen, but he was. And that seeing created space for something new to emerge, something the violence had buried but not destroyed. You breathe in and feel that space now. Perhaps there is something in you waiting to be seen, not fixed. A part you've been hiding from even your own awareness. A younger self still stuck in an old room. a thought you avoid because of what it might say about you. Let that rise now, gently, as if you are lifting it in your palms, not to offer it to anyone, but just to witness it, to hold it without fear. The Buddha did not look away from Angulimala's past. He looked through it to the part untouched by harm, the part that had never stopped longing for peace. And you have that part too. Beneath every regret is the one who regrets. Beneath every action is a heart that aches to begin again. That is what the Buddha saw, not the man's record, but the man's reaching. The stillness of compassion is not passive. It's radical. It dares to say you are not the worst thing you've done. You are more than the mask you made to survive. You are seen as you are and still worthy of peace. Can you offer yourself that gaze tonight? Not to excuse, but to include. Not to justify, but to witness. Not to forget, but to remember more truthfully the wholeness beneath the fragments. You rest now, letting your breath be a soft rhythm, a lullaby only your bones can hear. In the quiet, you imagine yourself looking inward with that same gaze, clear, open, unfearful. Can you see the parts of yourself that still ache? The part that's ashamed, the part that feels unlovable, the part that's trying so hard to be good. Don't push them away. Let them come to you like tired animals in need of rest. Compassion is not indulgence. It is inclusion. And inclusion is how the heart heals. Angulimala did not transform in a single moment. He didn't fall at the Buddha's feet and become holy. But that look, that single moment of true contact cracked something open inside him. And over time, that crack filled with light. Tonight, maybe something in you cracks open too, not to break, but to breathe. You don't need to understand it all. You don't need to earn the right to soften. You only need to be willing to be still long enough to be seen. The Buddha didn't need words to extend compassion, and neither do you. Let your very breath be the gesture. You are here. You are breathing. You are seen. Let that be enough for now. Not everyone forgives when you've changed. Not everyone sees the monk in the robes. They still see the man with the garland, the one whose name once made the air go cold, the one who turned paths red and eyes downward. People don't forget easily, and maybe they're not supposed to. When Angulimala began walking into the villages, as a monk, silence greeted him, first not reverence, but dread. Doors closed, children pulled behind arms, farmers gripped tools tighter, not for work, but for protection. He wasn't met with garlands of flowers, but with suspicion, stones even, thrown low and fast as if to test whether he was real or just pretending to be something new. And each time one struck him, he bowed his head, not to accept blame, not to argue, but because he understood. They weren't punishing him. They were protecting themselves. You sit with that truth now, that the world may not be ready for your change when you are, that people might still speak of who you were even when you no longer live there. And that's okay. You don't need everyone's acceptance to walk in peace. Imagine Angulimala Robe's dusty scalp bloodied from a well-aimed rock, his hands folded, his eyes soft. He walks not to earn trust, but to live truth. And that's a different kind of path, slower, quieter, often lonelier, but more honest than the loud applause of sudden praise. You've changed too, or maybe you're just beginning to, And maybe someone in your life can't see it. Maybe they still speak to the version of you who hurt them. Maybe they're not wrong, but that doesn't mean you haven't begun. Transformation doesn't come with witnesses. It arrives in silence, like dew on a stone, unnoticed by most, but unmistakable to the stone itself. You sit now quiet as that stone, and you feel the dew forming one breath, one letting go, one self-forgiveness at a time. The villagers weren't cruel, they were cautious. They had lost something to this man, and his robes didn't erase what had been taken, but neither did their fear erase who he had become. Both were true, and both existed side by side. That's the tension of awakening. To live as a new person while still carrying the echoes of the old. To be gentle in a world that may not yet believe you. Angulimala didn't run from the stones. He didn't shout, "I've changed." He didn't ask to be loved again. He simply served. He fetched water. He helped the sick. He bowed to those who wouldn't meet his eyes. And in time, not quickly, not completely, the village softened, not because he convinced them, but because truth walked long enough becomes visible. You can feel that in your own life. There are people who still only remember your sharp edges, but you are learning to move differently now. And even if no one claps for your softness, you still bow, not because you're less, but because you no longer need to be more than real. Angulimala's path didn't erase pain, it integrated it. He became a living reminder that even those who've harmed deeply can walk with compassion. And maybe that's why he wasn't universally celebrated, because his presence asked others to confront their own hardness, their own belief that some people can never change. You're not here to convince anyone. You're here to walk your path, even if the stones still come, even if the glances stay wary, even if the name they whisper behind your back is still the old one. You know who you are now. You feel it in your breath. You hear it in the stillness that meets you each night. You carry it not like a flag, but like a candle, gentle, flickering, honest. There is no need to shout into the silence. The wind doesn't explain itself when it shifts. The moon doesn't defend its return each night. You too can just keep showing up. Angulimala once stood in the heart of the village, head bleeding, eyes calm. He bowed, and then he tended to someone's wound, even as his own still ached. That's what redemption looks like, not glory but usefulness, not reward but service. And so you breathed. You remember not everyone needs to believe you've changed for it to be true. You are allowed to carry the past with humility and still walk forward. You are allowed to feel the sting of mistrust and still offer kindness. You are allowed to be becoming, and becoming is more powerful than being perfect. Let yourself rest in that now, not proven, not purified, just present, and that is more than enough. He could have left. After the stones, after the stairs, after the muttered names spat like curses from lips that still bled with memory, Angulimala could have walked away. He knew how to disappear. He had wandered forests before, slept beneath trees, lived without anyone knowing where his feet would land next. But this time, he stayed, and that was the truest sign he had changed. Not that he shaved his head or wore robes or stopped harming, but that he chose to remain in the place where his past was still alive in other people's eyes and didn't run from it. That kind of staying takes a different kind of strength. You've felt this, haven't you? The temptation to flee when the air thickens with reminders, when someone's face twists in pain at the sound of your name, when silence stretches long across the table because no one knows how to speak without speaking of what was. It would be easier to leave, to begin fresh, to vanish into a place where no one knows who you've been. But you're learning as Angulimala learned that true change happens in the soil where harm was done, not by erasing the past, but by choosing to walk differently on the same earth. He didn't come back expecting applause. He didn't expect understanding. What he brought was presence steady, consistent, real, a presence that didn't demand anything in return. He swept the monastery floor. He patched roofs. He sat with the sick and touched their foreheads with hands that had once only taken, not to undo what he had done that wasn't possible, but to offer what he could now. You imagine that the quiet discipline of showing up each day, even when the eyes that meet you are wary, even when no one says thank you, even when a part of you still doubts whether you deserve to be here at all. And yet, you stay. You do not flee your shadow. You learn to walk beside it. You notice how Angulimala's greatest act wasn't running toward the Buddha. It was not running away from the places where pain lingered. He stood in them, with breath, with patience, with the understanding that healing is not owed, it is offered. You sit with this truth now. It's easier to meditate when no one knows your story, easier to be calm when no one is holding your past like a knife behind their back. But real transformation is staying in the room, remaining in the conversation, offering love in the same places where you once withheld it. You're doing that now, aren't you? You're staying with yourself, with the breath, with whatever ache rises. And that's holy work. It's tempting to want quick peace, a clean slate, but the deeper liberation happens when you return to the places, to the people, to the memories, not to relive them, but to meet them with a new presence. Angulimala became a monk, not because he was forgiven, but because he was ready to stop running. And in staying, he gave the world time to catch up to who he was becoming. You can offer that same patience to your own life. Not everyone will understand the choices you make now. Not everyone will celebrate your stillness. Some may forever speak to a version of you that no longer lives here. Let them. Your staying isn't for them. It's for the truth in your own bones. The truth that says, I will not disappear from the place where love is still needed. You breathe that in. Let it settle. Let it soften something in you. To stay doesn't mean to suffer. It means to show up for what matters. To make tea where you once shouted. To breathe where you once fled. To hold space for the hurt yours and theirs without needing to fix or flee. The tree beneath which you sit now, it too has scars. A lightning strike once cracked its bark. A drought once withered its limbs. Still it stands. Still it roots deeper. You too can root, even in uncertain soil, even in silence, even in the presence of memory, especially there. Angulimala's vow was not loud. He did not stand before the world and declare his holiness. He woke before dawn, swept the floors, tended the sick, and bowed, not to be seen, but to stay. You let your own breath be a bow now, a slow inward gesture of reverence for your own effort, for your decision to remain with yourself, to keep walking gently, even when the air is thick with echoes. You are not fleeing tonight. You are resting, rooting, remaining. And in that stillness, something beautiful grows. There was no sign that said you are redeemed, no celestial trumpet announcing Angulimala's transformation, no monk standing beside him to explain his past or defend his future. There was only work, and so he worked quietly, consistently, without asking anything in return. He swept the leaves that blew endlessly into the monastery courtyard, the same leaves that no matter how many times he cleared them would return again by morning. He swept them anyway, slowly, mindfully, as if each sweep were a prayer offered to the world he once harmed. This was not penance. This was presence. Angulimala did not clean the floor to earn forgiveness. He did not serve the Sangha to erase his past. He served because there was work to be done, and in doing it, his hands became tools of peace instead of weapons of pain. You feel that quiet rhythm now, the slow, unglamorous holiness of simple action, the kind that doesn't wait for recognition, the kind that doesn't ask, will they see me differently, but only asks, can I bring gentleness to this moment? That is how Angulimala lived, not with sermons or public displays, but through the ordinary tasks that often go unnoticed. Refilling water jars, carrying firewood, washing robes, holding space beside a dying man who feared he would never be clean enough for peace. There was a time when Angulimala's hands only knew how to take. Now they offered without condition. He didn't preach. He didn't defend himself. He simply acted in alignment with the man he was becoming, not to prove he had changed, but because he had. You reflect now, where in your life are you still waiting to be seen before you serve? Where have you hesitated to love until it was safe to be loved in return? Tonight is an invitation to let go of that waiting, to practice service, not dramatic, not heroic, but the kind that begins in your heart and ripples outward without needing to land. A kind word to yourself, a silent blessing for someone who hurt you, a moment of breath given to presence instead of judgment. You don't need a robe to be of use. You don't need a title to begin again. The most powerful offerings often bloom in silence, unnoticed by others, but deeply felt in the soul. You think of Angulimala placing a bowl of food at the edge of a village where no one would come close. He didn't knock on doors. He didn't explain who he was. He simply left nourishment where it might be found and walked on. You too can leave kindness behind you, not because you must, because you can. Not to erase what's been, but to shape what comes next. This is the heart of karma, softly understood, not a ledger of deeds, but the ongoing ripple of intention, a movement of care through time. And you are a part of it, even now in the quiet of your own stillness. Let your breath be an offering. Let your rest be a form of reverence. Let your presence become a gentle blessing to all that surrounds you. The world doesn't need more explanations. It needs more steady hands, more quiet hearts, more people who sweep the leaves, not because they'll stay gone, but because it brings peace to sweep. There is something radical in doing what is good, even when no one is watching. Angulimala found dignity in that, in rising before the sun, in folding robes with care, in kneeling beside suffering without needing to be a savior. He knew he could never take back what had been done, but he could offer something else in its place. A presence that harmed nothing, a breath that belonged to peace, a silence that soothed, You feel that now not as a goal, but as a possibility. You don't need a perfect history to offer something beautiful. You don't need universal forgiveness to be of benefit. You only need a willingness to act from the stillness that lives behind your breath. You rest your hands softly now, palms open, relaxed, no longer grasping, no longer defending, simply available to whatever good may come through them. That is enough. The leaves will return tomorrow. So will the doubts. So will the memories. But so will your breath. And with it, the chance to serve again, quietly, gently, without expectation. It was a simple path, a stretch of road between one village and the next, the kind you could walk half asleep, where banyan trees swayed overhead and their roots snuck across the ground like forgotten stories. Dust rose with every step. Birds called from somewhere unseen. The day was neither hot nor cold, just still. Angulimala was walking barefoot as always, his alms bowl in one hand, silence in the other. Ahead, a woman cried out. The sound cut through the quiet, like a bell in a hollow temple. It wasn't fear, not exactly. It was effort pain life, bursting its way into the world. He followed the sound and found her crouched beside the road, her hands trembling, her brow slick with sweat. She was alone, giving birth. Her face twisted not only from labor, but from fear of the moment of her aloneness, and perhaps of him, because even now, even in his robe, even without his garland, some still knew his face. He paused, not from doubt, but from reverence. You pause with him now. You imagine the tension in the air. A man once called a murderer, now standing in front of life at its most fragile. A woman caught in the storm of birth, staring up at someone she's been warned to fear. And still there is no one else. No midwife, no family, just this moment. Angulimala did not panic. He did not preach. He did not try to prove himself. He simply asked what she needed, and when she couldn't answer, breath-broken pain mounting, he knelt in the dust and placed his bowl down, not in offering, in solidarity. Then he turned toward the forest and ran, robes flaring like flags behind him, to find help. That's the part the stories sometimes skip, that he ran, but not as he once did, not to harm, but to serve. You feel the echo of that now, the way action, when born of compassion, moves like wind through the leaves, quiet necessary without ceremony. He returned with women from the nearby village, elder mothers' quick hands, steady breath. They looked at him warily, but followed, because the need was greater than the fear. And when the child was born, when the mother wept not in pain but in relief, no one spoke of the man beside her. No one clapped, no one cried, but something changed in the air. A past heavy with violence had bent its knees before life, not with apology, with service. That's what you feel tonight, isn't it? The ache of wanting to make something right, not with words, but with presence. The wish to step into someone else's pain and say, I won't turn away. The urge to kneel beside suffering without needing to erase your own past first. You don't need to wait for perfection. You don't need to be free of all regret. You only need to show up with gentleness. That day, the Buddha told Angulimala something precious. When you act with compassion, even once, it creates a ripple through time that cannot be undone. That act, running for help, kneeling beside new life, became a turning point. not because it erased his past, but because it confirmed his path. You too can create those moments, small, quiet, not noticed by many, but real enough to soften something ancient inside you. Maybe someone needs you tonight, not to save them, but simply to stay. Maybe your own heart is the one giving birth to new patience, new clarity, a new way of seeing the world. Stay with it, hold it gently, kneel in its dust, and offer your silence as shelter. No one may remember the gesture, no one may know the weight it carried, but you will, and that is enough. Let your breath now be that offering. Let your stillness become support. Let your past, no matter how heavy, bow before the fragile beauty of this moment. A child was born beside that road, and a man who had taken life once offered his hands so that life might arrive in safety. That is what it means to begin again. It happened again, of course. A stone, sharp, swift, unexpected, thrown by a man who had once hidden his children in fear at the sound of Angulimala's name. Now, years later, that fear hadn't vanished, only buried itself into the curve of his palm, then risen like an old instinct as he saw the monk walking toward him on the same road where violence once reigned. The rock struck Angulimala's shoulder. It did not break the skin, but it startled the silence. He did not flinch. He paused. He bowed slightly, and he walked on. The man who had once hunted without pause now chose not to retaliate, not in voice, not in gesture, not even in thought. And this is where the deepest transformation begins, not in robes, not in chance, but in the mind that does not hit back. You sit with this image now of a man who once ran with rage, now walking with mercy. The world still sees his past, but he no longer walks from it. He walks with it. And even when stones return, he meets them with breath. This is not weakness. This is strength that has nothing left to prove. You breathe into that truth, now feel how powerful it is to not react, to choose presence over protection, to choose compassion over control. It's not that the pain disappears. The shoulder still aches. The past still lingers. But it no longer owns him. It no longer writes his response. And what about you? Think of a moment, maybe recent, maybe long ago, when someone misunderstood you, blamed you, shamed you. It's when every part of you wanted to explain, defend, lash out. You could have, but maybe you didn't. Maybe something in you paused, and in that pause, a new self was born. Angulimala's vow wasn't just to live gently. It was to live without retaliation, even when the world still spoke to the man he no longer was. That takes courage, a quiet, daily kind of courage. He did not suppress his anger. He transformed it into patience, into listening, into offering something better than what he received. You can do that too. And not because you're obligated, but because something in you is tired of the cycle, tired of shouting to be seen, tired of matching force with force. You breathe now, slow, steady. Let the breath become your boundary. Let your exhale be your release. The Buddha once said, hatred does not cease by hatred, but by love alone. And love in this context is not romance. It is non-retaliation. It is refusing to let someone else's story drag you back into the self you've outgrown. There will always be those who throw stones, with words, with looks, with memories. But you don't have to carry them. You don't have to throw them back. The man who threw the stone at Angulimala expected reaction, rage, fear, a fight. He received only a bow, and in that moment the story began to change, not for Angulimala, but for the one who threw. That's the quiet power of non-retaliation. It unravels harm without a single blow. You sit with that power now, the strength of soft eyes, the bravery of an unclenched jaw, the wisdom of a mind that does not need to win. You're not passive, you're present. You're not avoiding, you're choosing. This doesn't mean you never speak up. It means when you do, it's from clarity, not reactivity. That's what Angulimala learned, to respond with the mind of a monk, not the memory of a killer. He still remembered, but he no longer repeated. You may still remember too, but tonight you don't have to respond in the old ways. You don't have to defend yourself against every shadow. You can rest, you can bow, you can let the stone fall without picking it up. Let that be your vow for tonight, to meet the next sharp edge with breath instead of blade. And if you can't do it every time, that's okay. Even trying is sacred. You are becoming someone else, not by pretending the past never happened, but by choosing to walk differently now, even when the road is familiar. The wind moves through the trees above. Your chest rises and falls, and the stone, it rests untouched on the path behind you. Here had been fires, not literal ones perhaps, but in every village Angulimala once passed through, something had burned. The trust between neighbors, the rhythm of ordinary life, the sense of safety that used to live in children's chests. And though the fires were long gone, the ashes remained soft, bitter, clinging to memory like smoke on cloth. When he returned as a monk, he could still smell it. Some places, even years later, would not meet his eyes. Mothers turned their faces, elders lowered their heads. The silence wasn't cold, it was protective. Protective of what had once been lost. Protective of the wound they had carried together. He didn't force his way in. He didn't offer speeches or apologies too heavy to hold. He simply showed up when needed. And when the rains came slow, gentle, he walked through the fields as the water darkened the earth. He helped dig small trenches so crops wouldn't drown. He pressed his bare hands into mud that remembered the weight of his feet from another time. No one thanked him, not out loud, but the earth received him. That was enough. You sit with that image now, the one who once brought destruction, now helping cultivate life. Not because it erased anything, but because it honored what remained. Sometimes, the most powerful healing isn't about repair, it's about return. Not returning to the same role, the same status, but returning to the place of harm as a different presence, a softer one, a truer one. And like rain falling on charred ground, it doesn't bring immediate beauty. It brings soaking. It brings silence. It brings the slow, invisible chemistry of change. You have places like that in your heart, don't you? Fields that were once scorched by words you said in anger. Relationships cracked by absence. Rooms that still echo with the version of you that hadn't yet learned stillness. You cannot go back and undo the fire, but you can walk the field again, barefoot bowed quiet, and let the rain of presence soak what's left. The past is not asking to be forgotten. It's asking to be watered with truth. Let your breath now be that rain. Let it fall over the memory you've avoided, not to erase it, but to soften it. When Angulimala worked the land with his own hands, it wasn't about proving anything. It was about being part of something he once disrupted. He didn't pretend he had always belonged. He simply acted as if he might belong now. And slowly something began to sprout. A child who once cried at the sight of him began to watch instead. A man who never spoke began to nod when passing. A woman left an extra handful of rice near his bowl. Nothing was said, but something was received. That's what rain does. It doesn't demand, it offers. You can offer the same not only to others, but to yourself. Think of a part of you that still feels scorched, a mistake that still tightens your breath, a memory you visit only in dreams. Don't try to rebuild it. Just bring water, your attention, your breath, your willingness to be with it now without judgment. Healing is not the blooming, it's the softening. The roots don't break through the earth because someone yells at them. They rise because something softened the soil. You are that softness now. The ashes will not vanish, but under the right conditions, they can nourish. You do not need to prove your goodness. You do not need to be repaid in forgiveness. You only need to keep walking the same path with new steps, to keep showing up when no one asks, to keep kneeling where you once ran. Rain does not hurry. It does not justify. It simply returns again and again until the land remembers how to grow. You breathe deeply now. Feel the old ashes in your chest and the water you carry within you. Let them meet. Let them soften each other. Let something quiet begin to sprout. Angulimala never called himself healed. He simply kept walking, and the rain kept falling. It was never his name that caused the harm. Angulimala, a title born of fear, shaped by his garland of fingers, repeated like a warning through villages and monasteries. But before that, he had another name, Ahimsaka, the harmless one. And even deeper than that, beneath names spoken and written and remembered, there was something no word could touch: a stillness, a truth, a presence. What the Buddha saw. The world needed a name to call him, and so it chose Angulimala and never let it go. But over time, something unexpected happened. Not suddenly, not easily. The name changed, not in sound, but in meaning. When people spoke of Angulimala years after he had joined the Sangha, it was with confusion, even awe. He tends the sick. He walks without possessions. He teaches gently. He harms no one. The same name, but now a symbol of possibility, of transformation, of the path that no one believed could be walked. You sit with that mystery now, that a name once feared became a story whispered to inspire, that a man once cursed became a parable of mercy, not because his past was forgotten, but because it was fully lived through without escape. You may carry names too, names others gave you, names born from your worst day, from a single action or a silence you wish you had broken. Sometimes we take those names into our bones, let them echo in our thoughts. Failure, coward, disappointment, liar, names that feel permanent even when they were spoken in passing. But names are just sounds, stories, interpretations layered like dust. You are more than your name, more than what they called you when they were angry, more than the titles you gave yourself when you were afraid. Like Angulimala, You have the power to let your actions rename you gently, quietly, truthfully. He never asked people to stop using the name. He simply let it become different by walking differently. And you can too, not through performance, not through perfection, through presence. You breathe now deeply. Feel your name as if it were written on water. Let it blur, let it drift. Who are you beneath what the world calls you? Not a label, not a role, just this breath, this stillness, this soft willingness to remain awake. You don't need to reject your name. You don't need to prove it wrong. You only need to live into something wider than it can hold. Over time, Angulimala's name no longer echoed with fear. It echoed with reverence, not because he demanded it, but because he lived with such consistency that even memory had to shift. There is power in that, the quiet power of living your truth until the story changes. Maybe there are people who will never change how they speak about you. Maybe there are versions of your name that will never feel right. That's okay, because the trees do not call you anything. The stars whisper nothing but silence. The wind holds no opinion. And the truth of who you are does not need to be spoken to be real. You rest now in that namelessness, not lost but free. Free to move beyond titles, free to grow into the vastness of being, free to carry even your old name as a badge of becoming, not shame. You don't need a new name, only a new breath, and it's already here. Let the name fall from your shoulders. Let it settle like dust at your feet. Let it be what it is, a chapter, not the book. Angulimala once walked the earth as a symbol of terror, and then, without asking for it, he became a symbol of peace, not by erasing his name, by embodying something deeper. So can you, so are you. Stories cling, not just to names, but to moments, to choices, to silences, to looks exchanged across rooms, to years you wish you could gather in your arms and shake gently until they rewrote themselves. Stories are how people understand you, and sometimes how they misunderstand you. Angulimala's story was told and retold in monasteries and marketplaces, always beginning with blood, always ending with robes. To some he was a warning, to others a wonder, but to himself he was simply a man learning how to breathe without harm. You have your own story too, one that lives in your body, in your memories, in the places your mind revisits when it's quiet. There are parts of it you speak aloud, and parts you tuck into folds only you can find. Some days the story feels like a cage, other days like a map. But the truth is, you are not the story. You are the one who notices the story. You are the space it moves through, and that space is always bigger than what it holds. Angulimala did not edit his past. He did not deny it. He carried it like a shadow, not to glorify it, but to remain honest. And yet he did not live as that shadow. He lived as presence, as kindness, as a vow renewed each time he rose before sunrise and chose again not to harm. You sit now with your own shadow, not to banish it, but to befriend it, to say, I see you, I remember, and I'm still choosing peace. There's a quiet dignity in refusing to be reduced, in saying, yes, that happened, and I am still becoming. It doesn't mean the pain vanishes. It means it no longer defines the borders of your being. The past cannot be untold, but it can be placed gently behind you, like a stone in a garden wall, something that strengthens your foundation, not seals your fate. You breathe in now. Feel how even your breath does not cling. It arrives, it stays, it leaves, and you remain the space through which it flows. Angulimala's story began in fear, but it grew into a teaching, not about perfection, about possibility. That no one is fixed, that no name is final, that even those lost in suffering can become sources of calm. He didn't wait to be accepted before living differently. He lived differently because it was time. You don't have to wait either. Not for approval, not for applause, not for your past to look prettier than it does. You only need to begin again and again, as many times as it takes to respond to the moment in front of you with a little more kindness than before. That is how new stories begin. Not with sudden transformation, but with 100 small choices. With offering water when once you might have taken it. With listening where you once defended. With staying when everything in you wants to run. You feel that now not as pressure but as invitation. There is no need to force anything. No need to reframe your past like a polished stone. Let it be rough, let it be real, and let your breath carry you forward anyway. The people in Angulimala's life may never have fully understood, but his steps told a different story, and yours can too. You rest your palms gently. Your story still lives in you, but it no longer leads. You are walking now not in the footsteps of the old you, but beside them, wiser, softer, stronger not from armor, but from surrender. And the story keeps unfolding. There came a day when Angulimala no longer walked, not out of exhaustion, not from exile, but because stillness had become his path. He sat beneath a tree, far from any road or village, just beyond the noise of daily life. The tree was broad and old, its branches heavy with leaves that filtered the light like a monk's lowered gaze. Birds came and went. Wind whispered in the language only trees understand. And he simply sat, no more chasing, no more proving, no more needing to be seen. Just breath, just ground, just the silence beneath the tree. You sit with him now in this last moment of the journey, not at the beginning of a new story, but in the wide open pause that follows one fully lived. You don't need to speak. You don't need to remember everything. You don't even need to understand how far you've come. You only need to rest here in the hush that welcomes everything. This is not the silence of suppression. This is the silence of arrival. Angulimala had no ambition left, not even to be redeemed. He simply lived each day with a quiet vow, I will not cause harm. And in that small vow, a whole world bloomed. He watched birds build nests, watched clouds drift in and out of the sky's breath, watched his own thoughts rise and fall like leaves on a slow river. The same mind that once burned with rage now pulsed with stillness, not empty, full, full of space, full of awareness, full of the gentle, wordless understanding that all things pass and return and pass again. You feel it too, don't you? This spaciousness, this quiet, this freedom from having to be anyone for a while. You've followed the footsteps through fire, through shadow, through the humbling terrain of regret and return. And now, like him, you sit beneath a tree that asks nothing from you. Here you're not the story, you're not the effort, you're not the name, you are the space beneath all of it. Beneath the thoughts, beneath the breath, beneath even the wanting to be better, there is a still lake that reflects everything yet holds nothing. That lake is your mind when it no longer clings. Angulimala drank from that stillness daily, not with lips with presence. He no longer spoke much, not because he had nothing to say, but because he knew the most important truths cannot be carried in words, only in silence. And so he sat, and the world slowly stopped whispering his name in fear. It whispered it in wonder. How could someone so far gone return? But he did not concern himself with how, only with now. This moment, this breath, this branch swaying above him, this child passing nearby without flinching, this soil warming beneath his folded legs. You too are sitting now in a silence that doesn't ask for change, in a body that is enough, with a heart that despite everything still chooses to be soft. Let the ground hold you. Let the air move through you. Let the tree's stillness become your own. There is nothing left to seek. There is nothing left to run from. You are not broken. You are not your past. You are here, and that is the end of seeking. Not because you found something, but because you've remembered there was never anything missing. You rest in that truth, not grasping it, letting it dissolve across the sky of your awareness like morning mist. This was the final gift Angulimala gave, not his story, not his name, but his silence, a silence that said, you can stop now, you can rest now. You are more than what you've done, and you always were. So you sit beneath your own tree, with your own breath, and your own vow, a quiet whisper across the still lake of your mind. I will not cause harm. I will not abandon myself. I will remain. And in the hush that follows, you know you already have. The tree above you barely moves now. The leaves are still. The birds have nested. Even the wind has found its quiet. And here you are, no longer walking, no longer searching, just sitting, just breathing, just being. The journey you've taken tonight, through shadow and stillness, through harm and healing, it was never about becoming someone else. It was about remembering what's already within you, a mind that can soften, a heart that can remain, a self that does not need to be earned. Let the breath slow even more now. Let each inhale arrive like a tide, and each exhale drift away like a falling petal. You are not your past. You are not your titles. You are not the moment you regret most, nor the one others misunderstood. You are the presence that witnessed it all and still stayed. Feel that truth settle into your bones, not as an idea, but as a warmth, a steady knowing that radiates through your chest like the last light of dusk. The ground beneath you is steady, the sky above you is vast, and your heart, just as it is already enough. Let go of what still clings. Let go of needing to be better tonight. Let go of the question, have I done enough? You have. You've shown up. You've breathed. You've remembered. And now it is time to rest. Imagine the tree that held Angulimala wide-weathered, unshaken. Its silence held every version of him and never once asked him to be perfect, only present. Let that tree hold you now too. There is no need to solve, no need to fix, only to sleep, only to soften. Let the silence deepen. Let your thoughts blur like starlight through a misted window. Let your body become as heavy as stone, as soft as moss, as still as earth. This night belongs to no one. It is not measured. It does not ask for anything. It only wraps around you like a warm shawl woven from breath and forgiveness. So rest. Let the breath do what it does. Let the past be what it was. Let the peace be what it is. And if any part of you still whispers, "Am I allowed to feel this safe?" remind it gently, you already are. The tree is watching, the wind is holding you, and the silence is yours. Good night, dear one. Sleep well,